Good afternoon and welcome. My name is Michael Goodman, and I am the founder of Revenue Kinetics and a great participant in an organization called Rainmaking Mastery. And that matters today because one of my heroes in business, don't tell him I said that, one of my heroes in business is a guy who's done great work in the world of sales with healthcare organizations and finance organizations. And I'm going to introduce you right now. Welcome, Bill Merrow. I would love to hear a little bit about your story from the past and why you are a hero to many.
Well, Michael, thanks for having me on this show. I tell people I'm 135 years old. I'm only slightly younger than that. I think as far as the journey is concerned, to make it brief, I did 10 years in the Army out of high school. From there, I joined Cigna Health Plan in the HMO business and moved around across the country with them every year at Christmas for 5 years. And what I started with, Michael, was I was an accountant, and I set a goal to be controller by the time I was 30, and I got promoted to controller and woke up the next morning and said, I really don't like accounting. So I started to work myself towards sales and marketing opportunities, and I ended up in a tiny, tiny little division of American Express in Northern California that was selling something that was called nursing home insurance. And I ended up 3.5 years later having 40,000 salespeople working for me. And we sold the company in 1995 for billions of dollars to General Electric, and just have had a rock and roll sales and marketing career since then.
Wow. How many salespeople did you said work for you?
40,000.
That's just a small little division then, huh?
Yeah, fortunately, I had a lot of help. We had some structure in place there, but there certainly were opportunities to touch many people and see what their challenges were with selling a product that to this day is a very tough product to sell, but helping them understand the value they were given to their clients and making a difference in their lives.
That is some kind of effort. I want to come back around to that in just a moment. Is there anything else we should know, or I'm moving on?
Yeah, the only part I tend to sometimes forget as I breeze through, again, I mentioned the accounting thing, but I also went back to school and got a master's degree in behavioral science. So my shtick was always that now I can influence the numbers.
Ha! I think behavioral science is meant for people, Bill.
Okay.
Yes. Okay. So tell me something exciting and, maybe a secret that nobody knows about you.
Yeah, that's really hard. I mean, I like to tell people that I was born in a coal mine in Western Pennsylvania, and the only reason I survived was I got a blood transfusion, and I still bleed black and gold to this day. But everybody knows that, so that's probably the one thing that I probably haven't talked about a lot is my obsession in cars is with Jaguars.
Yes.
And had several of those, and had several of those mostly in the shop. So that's still my obsession.
Bleeding black and gold isn't a reference to the Pittsburgh Steelers by any stretch, is it?
It could be. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I think I once heard you say something. I work 24 hours a day unless the Steelers are playing.
Yeah, that's my only time I'm actually I can't be, I can pretty much be reached anytime, but if the Steelers are on, you don't want to talk to me.
I get it. I understand that. So you were talking about being successful with 40,000 salespeople and exiting that company for millions and millions of dollars. And that doesn't really happen by accident, things like that. It's certainly a learning process, and it's certainly something that establishes a degree of credibility in the world of sales and rainmaking that few really walk into small business with. What did you do to get where you're at today?
Well, again, I'm going to make it in the context of what you just teed up there, Michael. I think what I learned early in my career with so many salespeople that I was responsible for getting them productive is that salespeople's struggles are the same everywhere. They have to find somebody to talk to. They have to present in an effective way. They have to relate to the person and discover and uncover the needs, and then have a solution and design a solution and deal with those tough questions. And unfortunately, so many salespeople just don't have the discipline to do that. So what they end up doing is winging it, and winging it most often doesn't produce consistent results. So that's what we tried to instill in the salespeople we had recruited, is that they got a consistent way to do the discovery, to do the presentation, to complete the process. And it was a never-ending battle to get them out there prospecting and get off the couch. And frankly, here we are, let's do the math, 30 plus years later, and not much has changed in the world of salespeople. And we'll talk later about this in the world of professionals who do need to make it rain. And now you add on a layer of, they really don't want to be seen as a salesperson, but they still have to win clients. So they get an added layer of challenge with being effective in winning new clients.
So with all that experience and your background in behavioral science and helping salespeople become more effective, you've got to be sprinkling fairy dust, a magic secret sauce on them. Tell us about that.
Well, I know you teach this as well. I think that the most important thing is accountability. There's going to be elements that lead to it, but at the end of the day, you've got to be willing to say, I'm making up the numbers, I'm going to call on 20 people this week. I'm
Yeah.
going to have 10 appointments. I'm going to have 5 people that I get to the process where I get to make a proposal. You just have to be so clear about the metrics and so consistent in having those ducks in a row.
Yeah.
And if you struggle with that, you really need to get somebody to help you with that, because it is the consistency that allows the results to occur over time. And if you can't do it by yourself, get a coach, get somebody to help you hold yourself accountable, because without it, your results are going to be sporadic.
I'm so glad you said that. I get into this thing with my coaching clients on a regular basis on the secret sauce that I see, and your behavioral science background just really sweetens up this pot a lot in this thing. If you can keep people away from the fears of failure or the fear of not being good enough in this process, you can help them be powerful in achieving whatever it is that drives them forward, right?
Mm-hmm.
But that's where it lives for me. That's been my experience in this space.
Well, I would add to that I think, again, we're going to talk a little bit about salespeople in general, and then salespeople who are primarily professionals first. And again, I think if you look at how many salespeople are winging it,
Mm-hmm.
and you're a professional, so you should have a higher standard. You should have more discipline that you build into the structure of what you do to attract and find and sign and keep new clients.
Right.
Just because you have that additional education and certification and so on. And again, I'm not going to make it sound like it's easy to sell and not be a salesperson. But again, from a professional standpoint, the discipline you would think would be easier to implement, but some will, some won't. So,
And so what? Who's next?
yep. Mm-hmm.
You bring something up. You triggered a thought in me, and it's this: if you're powerful in being a professional salesperson, is it fair that people who are in professional services would want what it is you have or I have to represent themselves professionally out in the world?
Without doubt, yeah. I mean, again, again, we look at sometimes in puzzlement at why professionals are so afraid of this. It's
Right?
like, you went and passed the bar, or you got your CPA or something,
Yes.
and you have fear about going and meeting somebody for coffee.
Right.
What's up with that? Yeah.
What you were saying is exactly right. The mechanics of it is a learnable tool set, no different than learning the law. The performance game is a whole different part of the equation, and remind me to ask you about that particularly in a moment.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that because you are at the level of professionalism you're at, and people that we are talking to need to, not just should operate at a level of professionalism, but need to support the brand identity of the organizations they're working in. What would you say you do to develop trust and build credibility and discover interest when you're looking for new opportunities?
Yeah. If I had to pick one thing, Michael, it's a two-sided coin. And the first side of that is being really, really good at asking open-ended questions. And the other side of the coin is really listening. not listening for checking the box, but really getting immersed in the person's story, wanting to understand, wanting to paraphrase and play back, and ensure that you've made the connection and have trust at a level at which, again, it's not surface. It's not building rapport. It's building relationships. Yeah.
Yeah. Have you ever had the experience from that level of listening of almost feeling like you're in a Vulcan mind meld with the person you're speaking to?
Most often, yeah.
Isn't that cool? All right. So if you have success at that level, you couldn't have gotten there if you've done anything worthwhile, and clearly you have, without failing somewhere along the way. How has that shaped you?
Well, I think it's an attitude, though. So, we were bouncing back and forth with the sales formula, SW cubed N, some will, some won't, so what next,
Mhm.
is you really have to adopt that attitude. You can't be attached to, oh my gosh, I have to win this sale. I have to win this client. You have to meet the person where they are. Hopefully you can advance the relationship by demonstrating credibility, earning trust,
Mhm.
seeing if you have an interest. But there's no one, except somebody who's making it up, who says, I close every person I meet,
Right.
because they're not all ready and it's not all the right time. So I think that having that patience to be disciplined enough to say, I'm not going to win them all. It's okay. Move on to next. Don't go crawl under the crawl under the covers. Yeah.
Right? Good. I love that. And you failed once or twice, have you?
Yeah, but again, I think the attitude about it is, you just move on. You don't, it's like playing a 162 game baseball season. I don't think anybody's ever gone 162 and 0.
I'm going to double check. Yes, we are still recording. We had a little glitch there. And you were just saying, I don't think anybody's gone 160 and 0. And so we'll just keep going from right here.
Okay, so I'll just pick that up again, Michael. So, again, I think we're talking about failure. And I think, the minute you step into a role where you're have some accountability for results, you can't have the expectation that when somebody tells you no, you're going to run home and crawl under the covers,
Yeah,
or you're not going to go out again. It's like, okay, we just lost that game this morning. Let's play two this afternoon and get another couple at bats in. But again, if your expectation is you're going to win them all, you're not, and you just have to accept that and know that you're going to move on from that and be successful, and you can make that choice.
one of the greatest lines I ever heard is about the greatest quarterbacks. It's not that they never throw an interception or make a mistake. They just let go of it faster than anybody and get right back in the game, get focused on how many minutes, how many points, and how many yards do I have to go. Marshal the resources, go.
Yeah.
And I've always found that powerful.
And if we're going to stay with a couple more sports metaphors, again, I'm going to go back to baseball for a second. The people who are the greatest home run hitters in history are also the people who have the most strikeouts. So it's like, again, get over it.
Right? Well, let me change gears just a little bit and ask you about clients. Like, what are the greatest problems that the clients you serve typically face? And what's your best success story dealing with them?
Well, I'm going to have to scrape a little bit for picking one, but I think in general, what I find is when people don't live in this world of marketing and selling, their conception of it isn't complete. So they may know everything about how to practice law. They may know everything about how to, do taxes and be a certified public accountant. But now you introduce them to the concept of a different business problem. How are we going to market your firm? How are we going to get out there and win new clients? And they just don't have a complete conception of it. So again, it falls back into the winging part that a lot of salespeople do. And again, like you were saying earlier, as a professional, you can't have your brand bleed you being ineffective.
Right?
So you got to kind of step it up and say, what is my message? What exactly is it that we have that we offer? Do we understand our competition? Do we do our homework? And, are you prepared in your messaging to convey that? But the minute you take that from marketing to now one-to-one with a person, it's the same thing. You have to be clear on your brand. You have to be clear on how you're coming across across that coffee table or in front of a room if you're doing a seminar. Marketing and sales are really the same. It's how can you connect with somebody and advance your relationship.
I love these responses. I love interacting with you, and clearly I'm heavily involved in the answer to the question I'm about to ask you. But it is such a joy and a pleasure to do this work with you, who clearly understand what our motives and missions are, and we're making a difference out in the world. If you would, tell me a little bit about your firm.
Well, Rainmaking Mastery was created on the concept that professionals did not want to be salespeople, but to advance in their firm, they needed to make it rain new clients. And if they were a smaller firm, they needed to make it rain new clients to survive, right? So
Yeah.
it was like, how can we give sales knowledge and skills to people who don't want to be salespeople? So we repackaged it a little bit. We call it rainmaking. We try not to use the word sales, even though it's pretty obvious that we're talking about the process of how do you find, sign, and keep clients. But what we kind of framed from the start was the skills part of it is 20%. And anybody can learn the 20%. The
Yeah.
hard part's the 80% that's really the inside game. And how do you deal with your own self-identity, your behaviors, your attitudes, your beliefs? And in the performance game, which is our introductory course, we work entirely on that. It's like, we'll get the skills later. You'll get the skills. But if you don't have that foundation and have that support to allow you to go forward and execute the tasks that you need to do, you
Mhm.
won't do them. Nobody's going to, my favorite psychologist joke is, how many psychologists does it take to change a light bulb? Doesn't matter how many they are, the light bulb has to want to change.
Yes.
And it's the same for a professional. Is if you tell yourself, if your story
Yeah.
is you don't want this,
Yes.
you're not going to get it.
Right? It's never going to happen. I have a client who's making $400,000 a year. The hardest coaching for him is to get him to prospect. And last week he realized that even though he's making that much money, he's leaving on the table $600,000 a year because he won't get in the game of prospecting more effectively.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of crazy, isn't it?
Well, and I think one thing, again, looking over decades of salespeople, is sometimes you have to acknowledge that some people are great prospectors and some people aren't, and some people are great closers and some people aren't. And maybe you have to partner. Maybe you have to say, who's the finder in our group, and then
Yeah.
who's the person that sits them down at the table and gets that autograph. And if you truly have that impediment that you can't be all things,
Yes.
you can still accomplish it by getting the right people on your team.
Right. I love that. That's awesome. When you talk about this program, Rainmaking Mastery, what differentiates that from any other training program out there? And I think that there are dozens and dozens. How is Rainmaking Mastery better for a professional services firm?
I think there are a few reasons why. The first is, one of our beliefs is that training events don't work. It just doesn't stick. And the studies that show how quickly the knowledge that you would gain in a seminar or a workshop, how quickly it goes away, it's something like 90% of it is gone in 5 weeks, and in 90 days, 99%, and you might remember one thing. So our program is structured that it's a full year program. It's
Mhm.
completely online, so you can go through the program from start to finish, and you can go back and review the modules and lessons and really take it in chunks and come back and refresh yourself on the things that you need to keep working at getting better at. So it's not a one and done. It's not, I have to take this all in and apply it. It's like, you're not going to do it. You're going to have the consistency of having the experience and the knowledge fed to you in pieces, and then apply it, get some feedback, get some feedback. We provide a free coaching session to everybody who signs up, and we also have unlimited access if they want to get into our Slack channel and converse with us if they have a specific problem. We'll answer an unlimited number of questions for them. So it's really a commitment to, this is a year-long investment that you're making in us and you, to
Yes.
help you get from where you are to where you want to be.
That's really powerful. And I think one of the other differentiators that I see out there is a prerequisite course to getting into the sales training. you want to speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, well, again, as we said earlier, the performance game is where we start, and it truly, we laugh about it. Really, sales and a lot of life really is a game, and the part about sales that's a game is you do need to keep score. And you need to have that scoreboard in front of you. So, we make sure that you have the elements of how are you going to be a rainmaker, really getting at the inside part. And then what do you have to do to be a rainmaker? There are activities you have to do. This doesn't happen, but to have the results you want is going through that process. First, working on yourself, working on your activities, putting the accountability in place so that you can sustain your success, manage your calendar, have good game plans, communicate well, build relationships. And then you can get on to what are the specific tactics that you need to do to find new people. What do you have to do in that conversation to take them from a prospect to becoming a client? And then what often gets so overlooked is how do you keep them? Because if you can create raving fans, you're never going to have a prospecting problem again, because guess what? They're going to refer people to you back to the front end, and
Right.
you're building a great firm now. This is
Well,
the opportunity that professionals have, is if they just understand the full cycle of this and
yes,
build it from a great foundation,
yes.
they can accomplish anything they want.
I have to say it's so much easier to keep clients on the conveyor belt than to keep adding new ones, right? If you can do that. It seems to me that people are going to want to get a hold of you. And I don't know that we've been very clear about how to do that. So let me just ask, what's the best way for people to reach out to you?
Well, I'll give the domain is rainmakingmastery.com, and
Excellent.
my email address is really complicated. It's bill@rainmakingmastery.com, and I'm very happy to put my cell phone out there, 602-821-7340, and call, text, carrier pigeon. Join me on my Slack channel. I'll be happy to converse with anybody about how we can help them make it rain.
That's so awesome. Bill, I want to thank you so much. I want to thank you for being the inaugural interviewee on this program for me. I know our partner, Andrew, has been doing dozens of them recently, these interviews. I wanted to operate at a level of getting deeper into where people come from and how they've lived their lives in such a way to inspire and lead others to grow in their own business as well. So I really appreciate you taking the time today. Thank you so
Been
much.
an honor, Michael. Thank you.
All right. I look forward to seeing you out there in the world.